Now, you have favored getting out of Afghanistan for some years now, but you say the Beltway media and the corporate press are pretending to be angry about the details of the botched pullout, the evacuation, but they're actually mad about something else. Explain.
I do think there are people genuinely angry about how this withdrawal was effectuated while also favoring withdrawal. I also found the first segment you did with Jennifer Griffin, who I respect a lot as a foreign affairs reporter, who talked about the friendship she formed and others formed when they were in Kabul with English-speaking Afghans. I'm sure their emotions about their concern is very genuine. But at the same time, we have had 20 years of war in Afghanistan that killed huge number of Afghan civilians, usually not English-speaking, educated, sophisticates in Kabul who U.S. journalists befriended, but kind of unknown villagers, and there was very little media attention paid to that. And I always go back, Howie, and I've talked about this even before I began appearing on your show, to the 2004 article you wrote when you were the media critic for the Washington Post, the media reporter, where you detailed how at the Washington Post, a paper perceived to be liberal, they back-paged or excluded any dissent from the Bush-Cheney arguments about the war in Iraq. Why would a liberal newspaper like the Washington Post go to such lengths to help George Bush and Dick Cheney? It's because while they are liberal in many instances, their alignment in reality is to think places like the CIA, to the Pentagon, they do generally support war, and I think we're seeing a lot of that now. They didn't just turn on Biden out of fairness, but because they really do believe in this endless U.S. war machine as a matter of ideology.
Well, it wasn't just the Washington Post. A lot of media organizations later did mea culpas for aiding and abetting the march to war in Iraq. Now, you say that some of these corporate media organizations are pure militarists. They revere the CIA and so forth. If you're right, how did that happen after half a century after the press was a leading platform for the anti-Vietnam War movement?
So that's a really interesting and complex question. I just want to kind of emphasize that last correction or clarification you made. You're absolutely right. You know, in 2002, 2003, Fox News obviously was in favor of the Iraq War, but that didn't make much of a difference. They're largely conservative. Viewership already supported it. What sold the war were places like the New York Times, the New Yorker, the Atlantic, the Washington Post, selling the war to American liberals. And while it's true that there was some opposition to the war in Vietnam, if you go back to the Cold War, very often it was Democrats who were Cold Warriors under Truman, under Kennedy, under LBJ, Democratic presidents who prosecuted the war in Korea, the war in Vietnam, and outlets like the New York Times and Time that worked hand in hand with the CIA and with the deep state to disseminate pro-war messaging. So the American left has been against the war in the 60s, but I think the corporate press has often been aligned with the Democratic Party, and many of them were hardcore warriors of the Cold War, and then also in the post-9/11 era supportive of this endless war, and we're still seeing that ideology now.
Yeah, well, let me just suggest to you that Fox News doesn't have one position on the war or anything else. Fox News has opinion people, and it has reporters. I mean, I've got 20 seconds. By and large, you like the fact that President Biden, however messily, is getting us out of Afghanistan, just briefly.
I like the fact a lot that Trump initiated the negotiations with the Taliban and wanted to get out. I like the fact that Biden did too. I think there are valid critiques about how, but in general, it's long past time to end this war that was only enriching contractors doing nothing for the American people.
Well, on that last point, I think you have a lot of support from the American public. Glenn Greenwald, appreciate your stopping by this Sunday. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Howie.